Hey, runners. Welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, sport dietitian, certified running coach, and personal trainer. We are currently wrapped up on season 3 of the show. Thank you so much for another wonderful season. And not to worry, we will be back for season 4 in early 2026. Until then, I'm so excited to share these re-releases of the top 10 episodes from this past season. So each week we'll be dropping a new re-release from season 3 that hopefully you can catch or give another listen to. If you already heard it once, maybe you'll pick up some new gems this time around. Some of these re-release episodes are fan favorites. So these are the episodes that had the most listens and downloads from you guys, my lovely listeners and subscribers. But some of them are also my personal favorites that I just wanted to reshare. Some of the ones that if you missed the first time around, I really hope you'll tune in and give them a listen this time. I hope in these episodes you're going to find some new gems, maybe some new aha moments when it comes to your nutrition, your training, your recovery, your relationship with food and exercise, or maybe just a little bit of extra motivation to keep you running strong until we're back in 2026. And of course, if you haven't downloaded my new free resource, which is my free fueling audit for runners, definitely head over to the link in the show notes and be sure to get your copy ASAP. This is just a quick checklist that will walk you through the most common signs and symptoms of underfueling in runners and help you identify where the gaps are with your eating habits and where poor nutrition might be holding you back from reaching your full health and performance potential. So once again, head over to the link in the show notes. Definitely grab your free fueling audit. And of course, let me know your score once you're done. All right, let's dive into this week's replay. Enjoy. All right, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, and today we are talking about a very, very important topic. I could even go so far as to say this is the most important topic with the work that I do, and especially the work that I do with runners, which is talking about why nutrition matters, why you should care about your nutrition as a runner, and what is the value of better nutrition habits when it comes to your performance or your health as a runner, as an athlete, and just as a human being. Now, if you are a longtime listener to this podcast, then this is something that you probably already are familiar with, appreciate, understand to some degree. But if this is maybe the very first episode that you have ever come across of this podcast, maybe this is the very first time you've ever even heard of me or come across the work that I do, this episode is definitely for you. If you're a longtime listener and you are maybe even a client of mine that is listening to this podcast, then what I want you to take away from this episode today is just reassurance, that caring about this and thinking about this and putting emphasis on this in your life is incredibly valuable, more valuable than you even can probably comprehend. Again, not just for your performance as a runner and just for the workouts that you do, but just overall keeping you as healthy as possible, keeping your body functioning as optimally as possible, and all of those wonderful things, right? Setting you up for that long-term success with your health and fitness. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this on today's episode is because you probably heard my little blurb at the beginning of this episode, and I've had it incorporated into the beginning of all of my recent episodes of the podcast, that I have launched a new free tool that is here to help you assess your nutrition habits as a runner and to determine whether or not your fueling and your eating habits day to day are keeping you on the right track with your performance and with your overall health. So it's called my free runner's fueling audit. It's a very short yes or no quiz. It's just a couple of questions. There's 12 questions in total. It'll take you less than 5 minutes to, do this entire thing, like from entering your email address, opening up the email, downloading the fueling audit, going through the questions and reading your results. I think you could do that entire thing in about 5 minutes. So it's really a small chunk of time, but really reflective and really kind of holds up that mirror for you to see the impact that your fueling habits might be having on your performance and overall health. So looking at a number of different signs and symptoms that you might be encountering if your nutrition is not where it needs to be. A couple of other things that I've also included in that checklist are looking at your meal timing around your training and the frequency of eating throughout the day. Two things that matter a lot from a performance nutrition perspective, two things that I talk about and work with clients on all the time. So this checklist is really, going through the steps, going through, one by one, where are you maybe struggling, suffering, not feeling like you're reaching your full potential with your nutrition as a runner? And then, of course, what can we do about it? Right. And so I wanted to have this episode today to kind of look at why does all of this matter and what is the benefit of really looking at and tuning into your nutrition as a runner? So, like I said, you might already understand that there is value, but maybe you don't really have that deeper understanding of why, and maybe want to know, like, okay, I get that nutrition is important, like it makes sense to me that nutrition is important, but like, why exactly? What is the value? So the first thing I want to address and talk about here is the concept of eating enough to fuel your training demands, right? And that is so key. I mean, it's the most key thing, is making sure that we're just taking in enough energy to support the demands of both our basic body functions and the demands of our training. So eating enough overall to fuel our training means that our body has enough energy to keep up with the demands of our workouts while also keeping our body functioning properly. And what surprises a lot of people to learn is that the majority of the calories that we need to eat in a day actually goes right back into keeping our body functioning at that basic level. No exercise calories included, no, not even like light movement around the house or anything. Like if you've just spent the entire day just laying in bed doing absolutely nothing, even still, most of the calories that you burn in a day are going to be going into keeping your brain functioning, right? All the things that our brain does in a day for us, keeping our digestive system functioning, digesting the food that we eat, keeping our heart pumping, keeping our blood flowing, producing enzymes, hormones, making proteins, all of the different things that our body does in a day just to keep the lights on. Unless you're training and you're active for hours and hours and hours a day, and I mean like, almost to professional athlete level of training, right? We're talking about hours of training a day, multiple workouts a day, every day. Only at that point is your exercise calorie burn going to come close to meeting your basal metabolic rate or your resting energy expenditure. So unless you are that level of athlete, then your resting energy expenditure, your basal metabolic rate, a couple different terms and slightly different calculations. And, there's a little bit of nuance with exactly what we're talking about with that definition. But essentially what we're getting at is the calories you need in a day just to keep you alive is going to be the biggest chunk of calories you need. And of course, there's a big range here depending on primarily body size. So someone who is much smaller stature, a very petite person, is going to have a much lower daily energy expenditure, resting energy expenditure, than someone who is much larger, much taller. Age and gender also play a role, but like body size is going to be the primary thing that drives the differences that we see. So then we add on our exercise calories, and there needs to be enough to go around, right? We can't make something out of nothing. Our bodies can't make more energy out of thin air. Otherwise, if we're not getting enough coming in, something has to give, right? So two things happen. These basic body functions start to suffer, right? This can be anything from digestion. All of a sudden, we're starting to have gut issues. We never had gut issues before. All of a sudden, we're constipated, or we're having like random bouts of diarrhea. We're really bloated and gassy and uncomfortable after we eat. And, we're just getting like all of these digestive symptoms that we didn't really have before. And we can't really figure out like what's changed here, right? It may be that we aren't eating enough to support the demands of our training and keeping our gut function chugging along at the rate that it needs to. The other thing is our brain function, right? Our brain is a huge user of energy, right? Out of all of the metabolic functions that I talked about, the brain is the biggest one, right? The brain uses a ton of calories in a day. to keep it, doing all the things, right? I mean, it's thinking, it's computing, it's controlling all of these other body functions that are going on, right? It's a very important organ. It needs a lot of gas. And so if we're not getting enough, we can see changes in everything from mood, concentration, energy levels, sleep. When people talk about feeling low energy, brain fog, fatigue, moodiness, like all of these things, the first thing that I always want to find out is, are you eating enough to support the demands of your training, as well as all these basic body functions? And also the vitamins and minerals, the other nutrients that we need to also support optimal health and body function, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So digestion, brain function, hormone production, recovery from exercise, and of course, our actual performance. So if we don't have enough calories coming in to support all of these different demands, we're not going to be able to train as long or as hard. We are not going to recover as quickly, which is going to impact our injury risk and impact our ability to go out and train harder again, right? You can see how there's this kind of domino effect of just not eating enough calories to support the demands of our training. And so what we call this, of course, this is a very well, sort of defined thing, a phenomenon that we talk about in the sport nutrition space, and it's called low energy availability, right? We are not eating enough to support the demands of our basic body function and our training demands. Low energy availability. There isn't enough calories to go around. Now, of course, this can progress into something called relative energy deficiency in sport, where we are in fact seeing these specific changes in function, symptoms, signs, issues with production, with performance, recovery, with all the function of these different organs, et cetera. So we start to see these overt signs and symptoms, right? We can go through a literal checklist, are experiencing this, that, et cetera, and see how many of these things, every body system can be impacted by low energy availability. So, to kind of zoom out a little bit, like those of us who work in the sport nutrition space and have been working in the sport nutrition space for a long time. I mean, me personally, like I've been a dietitian for over 10 years now. So I've been doing this for over a decade, and I became a personal trainer way back in 2009. So I'm not new to this field, new to this area. And of course, I've been helping runners and athletes from a number of different sports really look at their fueling habits and look at their fueling practices and make sure that no matter what the volume training is that you're doing, that the amount that you're eating, the amount you're taking in matches that. I will never, ever forget the first person that I ever told that I didn't think that they were eating enough. Now, this is a conversation that I've had quite literally countless times in the 10 plus years that I've been doing this work. But this woman, the way that she looked at me, like I was an absolute lunatic for me to suggest that the reason she wasn't seeing the results and the change that she wanted to see was because she actually wasn't eating enough. Like that was crazy to her. And I get that, like, you're so used to hearing eat less, move more, eat less, move more, eat less, move more. And it's all about, calories in, calories out and that sort of thing. So I totally get how when someone comes out and is like, well, actually, I think you actually need to increase your intake, that sort of thing, that can feel really surprising, really shocking, really confusing. And, that wasn't a message that she was really expecting or maybe wanting to hear at that point in time. So anyway, I hope she's doing well and, has got things figured out since then. Anyway, so we in the sport nutrition space, like, know this can be an issue, and it is somewhat a recent development. We even just in the last decade, since I was even in university, have come to appreciate that this is not a problem that only affects females, right? The biggest thing that we used to see and be able to address when it came to, the previous iteration of low energy availability and REDS, which was the female athlete triad. It was really that loss of menstrual function, right? A female athlete losing their period. That was like, oh, this is a sign that there's something going on.
So it wasn't until there was way more research done and way, lots of different iterations of seeing like how this actually affects all these different body systems in different ways that it was even like, oh yeah, you know what? This actually can affect men too. And it just goes to show kind of how new this is. And so for those of us who work in the space, work in this field, we're so immersed in it every single day that doesn't feel new. And a lot of it feels very like, well, yeah, of course, right? Like it makes total sense. But I get that if you're on the outside of this, this can be really new or really surprising information. All right. So I think that a lot of runners don't really appreciate or understand or even know that just simply not eating enough can have such far reaching impacts, right? Like not just into their performance or your ability to recover or your injury risk or maybe your body composition and not seeing change that you want to there. But I think also people don't really understand how much energy is needed, like just to keep your body functioning, just to keep your body running, right? We tend to think about the exercise calories, like the burn side of that equation as being like this big factor. But for most recreational runners, again, unless you're out there for hours and hours and hours a day, that's not even close, right? That's not even going to be, not even 25, 30% of the calories that you're burning for the total day. So that's one piece of the picture. Why else does nutrition matter? Like what else is going on here? We definitely want to be eating enough to fuel our training, but also getting the right macronutrient balance. This is the right amount, the right breakdown of carbs, fat, and protein, right? And the right balance of those three. We use these macronutrients for different things. So macronutrients are where we get calories. So carbs, fat, and protein each gives us calories. And all those add up to the total calories we eat in a day. Alcohol also contains calories, but my piece of advice generally about alcohol is it shouldn't be enough to it shouldn't be such a frequent and consistent part of our day. The calories from alcohol that we consume shouldn't be to a high enough degree that it's like incorporating a big chunk of the day's calories. So it's going to be 99.9% carbs, fat, and protein most days of the week. So we use these macros for slightly different things. Fats and carbs are primarily a source of energy, and we use more or less carbs and fats at different exercise intensities. Protein is needed for repairing and rebuilding our body's tissues. So that's going to be like just day-to-day turnover, right? Cells die, we need to make new ones. All our different body cells have different lifespans. So we're just always in this process of rebuilding and turning over our body's tissues. Totally normal part of just being a human being existing in this world. But then, of course, we do extra damage with our training, which needs to be repaired. So when we do more training, heavier training, heavy lifting, harder workouts, right? We're doing more damage to our body's muscle tissues, which then need to be rebuilt and repaired. And so this is where protein comes into play. And of course, this is why athletes, and especially athletes who are doing higher volumes, more intensity, twice a day workouts, etc., need more protein than people who are sedentary, right? Because we need have a higher demand for those recovery processes, rebuilding and repairing our body's tissues. So if our diet has maybe the right amount of calories overall, but our diet is way too heavy in one area versus another when it comes to our macronutrient distribution, we can have gaps in not optimizing our performance and body function because that macro balance is missing. So for example, right, low carb diets have been very, very popular for the last number of years. They come in and out of style depending on what's happening in diet trends and in the world. But for the most part, there's been a few major upswings in the popularity of low carb eating. The 50s, 70s, the 90s, we see this kind of come and go over time. And so we can be having maybe a good amount of calories coming in, but it's predominantly fat calories and protein calories, right? And whatever mix of the two, again, kind of depends on the era. Some of the low carb diets have been very fat predominant. Other ones have been very protein predominant. What they have in common, though, is that they're low carb and then higher fat protein. The exact mix of those two can vary depending on what particular diet a person might be following. And so I see this a ton in the running space with a lot of clients that I work with. with the carbs. So a runner might be taking in a decent amount of calories, right? So on paper, do a little bit of tracking, do a little bit of investigating, look at what they're eating. Yeah, you know what? Like their calories are pretty good. Like they're pretty within range for what I would expect them to need based on their body size, their resting energy expenditure, and their training demands. But their carb intake is way too low for their training volume, right? Their carb intake is maybe 25, 30% of their total daily calories, right? Way lower than what it should be for the demands of their training. What this means is that they don't have the fuel available for higher intensity workouts, right? When they want to turn up the gas, turn up the throttle, shift gears, hit those higher intensities, that energy isn't available. They don't have that fuel to train at a higher intensity, right? So quality of the workouts and performance during those workouts is going to suffer. You might feel like you are working very hard, but that does not mean that objectively you are hitting the paces or the duration or have the stamina that you should based on your fitness level if you're missing the fueling piece, right? I'm going to say that again because I think this is so, so important to understand. You might feel like that workout that you're doing, right? The effort that you are putting in during this workout is a very high, very hard effort. But it's the lack of fuel that is making that workout feel so hard. Objectively, you should be able to do more. You should be able to do better given the fitness level that you have, right? So we're seeing this disconnect with the quality and the performance of your training. And also the other big issue with this is that the protein calories that you would be utilizing for recovery are going to get shuttled into extra glucose production, right? Because the brain needs glucose. And so then the protein calories that we are consuming, and maybe you're on a higher protein diet, so you got a little bit to spare. Maybe you're on kind of a lower to moderate protein diet with a lot of calories coming from fat. And so now we're lacking the protein that we need for recovery. We're lacking the protein that we need for the production of things like hormones and enzymes and stuff like that, because that protein has to be broken down and converted into energy. Because we cannot make something out of nothing. The body is incredibly resilient. The body can make glucose out of other substrates, right? The body can make glucose out of protein, but it can't make energy out of nothing. And so this is where a lot of people get into trouble, that they're eating quite a bit. They're eating a lot, they're eating a good amount of calories, but it's not the right kind of calories. So this is something that we really need to look at and really need to address. Some research, interestingly, just on this topic of carbohydrate calories and the right macro balance, some research has also shown that, low energy availability is often very similar to low carbohydrate availability. So the signs and symptoms and things that we can see happening with low energy availability can be mimicked specifically by not having the carbs available. And, really what that shows, what that says is that the carbohydrates, getting enough carbohydrates are key for keeping our body functioning optimally, keeping our performance where it needs to be, and allowing those other nutrients, other macros like protein, allowing it to do its job, right? Rather than it being shuttled into glucose production and being used to make energy, letting protein do its job because we're eating enough carbohydrates to support the demands of our training. It's amazing how much better our workouts can feel, how much better we can perform when we have the carbohydrates in the tank to burn at those higher intensities. So the other thing that comes into play here, right, when we're talking about the right balance and getting the right amounts of different things, also means getting enough of the right micronutrients, right? Vitamins and minerals. These are things that don't give us calories, but have a tremendous role to play in body function, recovery, performance, and sometimes all of the above, right? I'm talking about things like iron, vitamin B12, omega-3 fats, calcium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, zinc. There's lots, right? We've got dozens of micronutrients that we need, and then we have trace elements, things that we need in very, very teeny tiny little quantities in our diet that we get from different food sources. But this is where, when we talk about overall nutrient quality, it's not a matter of just getting our calories and our macro needs met from, a lot of like convenience foods or protein shakes and protein bars that maybe are lacking some of these micronutrients that help to support our overall body function, recovery, performance, etc. Because we can be getting enough calories and we can be getting enough protein. But if the protein sources that we're consuming are not giving us enough nutrients like iron, B12, calcium, omega 3s, zinc, we can still become deficient in those things because the specific food choices we're making are not giving us the quality that we need in our diet. And so again, looking deeper and looking at our nutrition from that lens, that deeper perspective on, what do we need in order to be a healthy person and a healthy athlete? This is also another important piece of that. So, it's eating enough to fuel the demands of our training. It's getting the right macronutrient balance and making sure that we're getting enough of the right micronutrients to support us, from the ground up, right? Support us all the way through all of the different things that we do in a day. So to kind of come back to the beginning of this episode, why does nutrition matter and what's the value of good nutrition as a runner? Obviously, the value here is performance benefits, right? You're going to see better performance when your nutrition is dialed in and when you have a good habits, good practices around your eating, right? You're going to be able to recover faster, meaning you're going to be able to do more, fewer rest days, which isn't, we need rest days. But if like after every workout, you're so sore that you need to take a day or two off in between every workout you do, right? There's going to be a limit on how much you can run, how much volume you can put in because your recovery is stalled, right? So if we can recover faster, that allows us to train more, get in better quality training, right? I'm not saying just like skip your rest days, but have the nutrition there that allows you to need less downtime in between workouts, right? And to be able to train at your full capacity, right? See the best possible results from the work that you're putting in. The other big thing is that, having a deeper understanding of the value and power of good nutrition and what our needs are as a runner and as a unique individual. When we have that, we can really start to make better, more informed choices with our eating. This means that we can stop chasing diet trends. This means we can stop trying to piece together nutrition information and a strategy from the little bits and pieces that we see on social media. As I've mentioned on previous podcasts, one of the most disturbing trends that I have seen in the last couple of years with social media is the rise of the monetization of social media, right? Where now people who live in certain places, so not me in Canada, fortunately, we do not have this available to us in Canada, but on TikTok, on Instagram, you can get paid for views. It used to be on social media. So prior to this, on social media, if you wanted to make money using social media, you had to have something to sell people off of social media, right? So there had to be something of substance behind the social media platform that you could bring people into and then sell to them, right? And for people like myself as a practitioner, right? As a dietitian, as a running coach, as a practitioner in this space, this is what I have, right? You can come and you can work with me in my programs, whether that's one-on-one or in my online program. You can buy my ebook. Like I've got things behind the social media account that you see that is what's going to get you to that next level, give you the result that you're looking for, and work with me in that space. And that used to be essentially the requirement. Everyone had to have that. So there was no point in having a massive social media following with tons and tons of people watching your content if you didn't have any, you could do that and lots of people did, right? Hence the rise of the influencer. But if you didn't have that, you weren't making money on social media, right? But then things changed, things shifted, where now just by getting a viral post, just by getting millions of views on a video, Now, all of a sudden, you're getting paid just for having views on that video. You don't need anything behind that. You don't need anything next to that to say, okay, here, come buy my thing. Here's the problem that I have with it is that that means that the actual content, the message, the quality of the information you're seeing no longer matters, right? Because that person does not need to have anything of substance behind it to come and actually get you to come in and buy their thing. They don't have a thing. They might have a thing, but they don't necessarily have a thing. All they need to do is get you to watch this video. So people can say the wildest stuff. People can say things that are completely untrue, but they know is going to get you heated up. They know they can say things, they can do things, they can post videos that are going to get the most engagement. The videos that are going to get people angry, the videos that are going to get people reposting, the videos that are going to get people giving their hot take, right? So it's the hot takes, it's the unpopular opinions, it's just the bigger, the bolder, the crazier, the better, right? Because more views equals more dollars. And as a user of social media, especially for those of us who have been using social media for a long time, right? I mean, I'm a millennial, so we were there from the ground up. We built the Facebook and the Instagram. That was us. That was our generation. And so we have gone from being able to not trust. Trust is a crazy word. I don't want to say trust because you could never trust everything you see on the internet, but it went from if you were seeing health, nutrition, fitness information, the person who was putting that out there had to have some level of confidence or belief in their message, in what they were saying, because they wanted you to come and work with them, come and buy their course, buy their program, buy their book, buy their product, work with them, whatever it was. So there had to be some kind of quality to that. There had to be something about them that made you know, like, and trust them in order to go down that next path, go down the next route of actually making a purchase. That's no longer the case. Things have shifted kind of underneath us without us even really being aware of it. And I don't know if you feel that way when you go on social media, but I certainly do. I see that change in the type of content that is out there, the type of content that is being shared and goes viral and is being created. It's not quality. It's just craziness. And so anyway, what this means for you as a runner, why nutrition matters. Oh my goodness, I'm going so off course here. I was trying to keep this episode short. I don't think I've been successful in doing that. When we understand nutrition and the value and power of good nutrition, when we know what we need as a runner, what we need as a new individual, we can stop chasing the trends. We can stop getting caught up in the social media garbage. And we can feel confident enough in our eating choices that we can consistently make progress and see better results, right? Because consistency is key. If you've ever been on a diet, on a trendy diet, on a fad diet, right? I mean, many of you have probably tried different things over the years. Maybe you've tried lots of diets. Maybe you've tried all the diets. Maybe you've tried one or two diets, but I think we all can agree that at some point in time, we probably have all tried to make a change to our eating that ultimately wasn't that sustainable, right? And so we know if we do something for a week, or we do something for a month, or maybe a couple months, right? It doesn't really matter if we don't stick to it long term. We can lose a couple of pounds in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months, but when we stop doing that thing, we're going to go back and gain the weight back, right? We have to be able to make shifts and make changes in our eating that we feel good enough about and we feel confident about, so we can consistently make that, see the progress, and see the better results long term. This is what I do for my clients every single day. And I want to help you do this too, right? If you are listening to this episode and you are maybe now aware for the first time of the power and the value of good nutrition and what that means for you as a runner, if you are a longtime listener to the podcast and this is just reinforcing what you already know about the value and the power of good nutrition, great. Welcome. You're in the right place. So where do I want you to start? I really, really would love you to start by getting the free fueling audit. So as I mentioned, that's the purpose of this episode, was to kind of talk about the fueling audit and why I made it and why I think it's so important and what I want runners to take away from it. So at the link in the show notes, you can download this free fueling audit, and I want you to go step by step through the assessment. Like I said, I'm talking 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes from start to finish. It's not a huge chunk of your time. It's not going to take you all day. Something that you can do, literally before you go to bed tonight or first wake up in the morning. I don't know when you're going to be listening to this episode. You can do it as you're eating breakfast, whatever. Go ahead, download this free fueling audit. Let me know your score. I want to know how you did. I've been getting some messages back from people already who have gone through the fueling audit, and some of them have doing pretty good. I'm happy. Some of my current and previous clients have done the fueling audit, which I think is great. And again, coming back with letting me know what their score is and knowing exactly where they want to make those changes. So send me a message on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian. Let me know what you scored on the Runner's Fueling Audit. If you know your nutrition needs some help, right? If you checked off maybe just a couple of things on the audit and you're like, hey, I just need a quick tune-up. Maybe in this episode, I talked about a couple of things that were really eye-opening for you. And you're like, okay, you know what? I really I had no idea the importance of macronutrient balance. I didn't realize that not getting enough carbs specifically can impact my training or whatever it might be. If you just need like a little tune-up, then that's going to be, a fairly straightforward fix. Couple of little things we can work on that. If you're really struggling, right? If you checked yes on a lot of the questions, that's okay, right? That's what it's here for, right? To help you address your concerns, see where you're going wrong, see where you need help, see where the gaps are, and then start making a plan to get your fueling on the right path so that you can actually reach your full performance potential, right? Like, I don't want you to stay stuck. I don't want you to stay struggling. I don't want you to ultimately hate running, maybe quit the sport because it just was too hard. You were getting injured all the time. You weren't getting better. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. No, right? Your nutrition is so unbelievably powerful in this space. And if you know that you're struggling, if you checked yes on a lot of questions in the assessment, I've got a lot of ways that we can help you get started to better nutrition habits, a better, deeper understanding of fueling and how to make this all come together for you. I have my brand new ebook, which is called Fuel Smarter, Run Stronger. I will link that in the show notes as well. So I highly recommend, if you need a tune-up, if you're struggling with your nutrition, if you checked yes on some of the questions in the assessment, this ebook is a fantastic place to start. If you're looking for something a level up from that, if you want a little bit more help, a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more coaching from me, then of course, I would love to invite you to join me inside the Fuel Train Recover Club, which is my online program for runners. We've got your fueling covered. We've got your training covered. We've got your recovery covered. We have everything you need to become the most successful, strongest runner that you can be. And of course, I always am working with a small number of one-to-one clients. So if you really want that added level of personalization from me, making your training plan, guiding your nutrition, looking at everything, even just down to your genetics of how you respond to training, what your nutrient needs are based on your genes. I do take a small number of one-to-one clients each season. And so you can reach out to me and see if I've got spots available. So I've got my ebook, Fuel Smarter, Run Stronger. Great place to start. It's only $27. Have the Fuel Train Recover Club, which again, you can join on my monthly membership for a fantastic price, only $89 a month. Or I have a small number of openings for one-on-one clients each season. All right. I hope you found this episode helpful. Really hope that it gave you some insight into my new fueling audit, why it matters, why I think you should care about your nutrition. And I hope you enjoyed my little tangent about social media as well. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate taking time to listen and hang out with me here today. And of course, if you have any feedback, questions, things like that about the fueling audit, about this episode, anything like that, I would love to hear from you. You can find me over on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Again, it was wonderful spending some time with you today, and we'll see you right back here next week. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.